Good morning, everyone. So my name is Eric Feyen. I'm the Technical Director of UIRR, and we are pleased, I think, to have you on board for this webinar on TSI Telematics. We have all the speakers have been already connected, or already connected, and now we are waiting then for the additional guests. I see that we are already 70 participants to the webinar. We had in total more than 140 registrations. So we will wait 1 or 2 minutes and then we can start. So I'm pleased to be the host of today's webinar, the new TSI Telematics, so the impacts on the intermodal freight transport. So we are organizing this webinar in the context of our project called EDICT, which has the aim to facilitate the exchange of information in intermodal freight transport. I will come back to that a bit later. The agenda of today's webinar. So we organize a webinar in 2 parts. The first one is more about the policy initiative. So it's focusing on the TSI tough design and the TSI Telematics. So I'm pleased to have on board here today Yann Seimandi from the Commission, that is responsible for drafting and proposing a new way of sharing data in the railway sector. I will be presenting a bit the key results of EDICT and what kind of recommendation we have made for this TSI Telematics. And then there will be a Q&A session. And then on the second part is more a practical implementation of some of the requirements that are put in the TSI Telematics. So today we have Jaroslav Lučkay from RNE that will present one of the outcome of EDICT is the so-called RNE TIS Group Solution to facilitate integration of smaller players into the data sharing. And then we have a data solution that will be presented by Mr. Christoph Büchner, the Managing Director of TSI, that has recently launched this data hub for the intermodal stakeholders. And I will close the session with the CEF project and to just inform the audience that UIRR is drafting a new CEF proposal. And we are expecting, I think, a positive evolution after the submission that we have to do by the end of January 2025. I will start with the data sharing. Maybe I forgot to say that this session will be recorded. It's not only for internal purpose, but we are also then using this for dissemination and promotion. So we will also then put this this webinar session on our YouTube channel and then also on our social media as contact. Yeah, that's to be clear, I think, for everyone. The first topic of today's webinar is data sharing. So that's a word that is used now more and more often. Why this is important for UIRR? So you have on the screen, I think, a bit our galaxy. So we are representing the intermodal freight sector in Europe, mainly by promoting the interests of the intermodal freight operators and also the terminal operators in Europe. So that's what you see in the middle. And what you see then on the outside is all the environment in which we're involving. We have partners. We have, of course, concluded some a memorandum of understanding with some national association. And our key targets is the bottom right is the governmental bodies. One of them is, of course, the Commission, where all the policy initiatives are starting and all the legal different, I think, texts are initiated. Data sharing. To make it very easy, we call the exchange of master data and also transactional data as part of the data sharing. So master meanings reference file, transactional data, to make it clear, is all the information on the train, for example, on the wagon that might be exchanged between the stakeholders, but also in data sharing, we are including also then the public stakeholder regarding, for example, the recent adoption of the EFTR regulation, which impose data exchange, data sharing between the businesses and the authorities. I invite all here people in attendance to have a look, I think, on the overall strategy of the Commission regarding data. You see on the bottom left the different strategy, and I really insist, I think, on for the audience to have a look on the Data Governance Act and also on the Data Act, which really clarifies the rules in terms of data sharing, on data sharing, not only, of course, for the transport sector, but for any types of sectors that are starting with data sharing. What is maybe forgotten in data sharing is what we call prerequisites or the preconditions. First, between two people or two entities, there must be a kind of willingness to share data. It seems to be obvious, but in most of the cases, and we had some issues within the EDICT project, that we have the feeling there is no willingness to share the data. Of course, if you want not to share the data, it's difficult, of course, to implement some of the solution. The second one is the capabilities to share. So you need the IT capabilities, you need hardware, you need application, and also standards in order to be able then to share. The third one is also very important. It's great that some entities share the data, but it's also a need to monitor this data and to be sure, I think, that the data you receive, you can really use them for your operation. And here also in EDICT, we had some issues that, yeah, we received data, but they couldn't really be used because of a low quality. So that's a very important, I think, also condition that we have the willingness of the business or entities to share, the capabilities to share, and also then to monitor the data sharing, and certainly, I think, to improve the current status of the data quality. Recently, we have published a position paper on data sharing, explaining the importance of improving the data sharing in our sector. We speak about intermodal here, freight, transportation. We have a lot of pressure coming from the customers. So customers, we are calling here them freight forwarders, logistics service providers, and shippers. So it means that we have, as association and also our member companies, to somehow link the railway world with the logistics world. And that's why we need absolutely to improve the data sharing. That's really in the discussion that we have with our customers, a very important criteria for selecting a transport mode. So meaning that they compare the digital evolution between the transport modes, so meaning between road and rail. And of course, if the road is more, I think, attractive than rail regarding digitalization and data sharing, that certainly be an option, I think, to be selected by the shippers. The second aspect that we put also in the position paper is the relevance of the right data elements and message that need to be agreed. Because we have a lot of, maybe initiative, but there's no agreement between stakeholders about the data elements that should be shared. That's part of our position paper. I will come back to that a bit later, because some of the position that we have in the paper is also something that we have asked to be put in the TSI Telematics. In a nutshell, what we said, I think that's not really a surprise for all of you, but we need to continue to standardize and harmonize the master data, so what we call the reference file. That's also part of the TSI Telematics, but maybe what is important is to have clear governance rules, because we have a lot of changes in the last year. We need a stable here system in order to be sure, I think, that the master data remains in the same place. In the new TSI Telematics, you will hear, I think, that there will be the intention that the European Railway Agency would be somehow governing all this master data. That's a good, I think, proposal, but I hope that we hope as UIRR that it will be then a stable environment for the next years. We should have the similar efforts for what we call the transactional data. So this transactional data is really what is concerning the train running information, the train status message. And we highlighted a key issues in intermodal that also we have to concentrate on SMEs. Here you have just a small graphic representing the categories of the terminals, for example. And it's very clear that more than 80% of our terminal members are considered as SMEs. And here we have to find the right solution for those SMEs that are, and I'm coming back to the first slide about willing to share the data, but now we are having the problem of this capability. So they are not at the same level of capabilities as other actors like you see on the large and extra large, I think, intermodal freight terminals. I will invite now Yann Seimandi from DG Move. So he's responsible for the TSI Telematics. We have invited him to present the key now principle and requirements that have been put in this new TSI. So Yann, the floor is yours, and you are going to share the screen.
Yes. Good morning. Many thanks.
We hear you well, Yann. Yes, we can start. Yeah.
Cool. So many thanks for today's opportunity to kind of advertise the work done on the TSI Telematics with a specific focus on terminals and intermodal transport operators today. Let's first start with the objective we are pursuing with let's say, enhanced digitalization through this TSI. So obviously, we all want to shift more freight onto rail, and to do that, there is a need for the customers to have a cost reduction as let's say a seduction argument. And along with the cost, efficient planning of operation is also another important aspect, without saying about safe management of operation, which is actually a prerequisite. But how do we do that? How do we achieve that? Beyond all the prerequisites just mentioned by Eric, there is a need for timely and quality data sharing, and this is basically around this pillar that the TSI defines. So quality criteria, timely data sharing, obligation to share, but also structured data to be shared. What is the current picture? Also requiring legislative action beyond the currently applicable framework. We are today facing a situation where customers, or potential customers actually, are not necessarily able to make an informed decision on their preferred transport option, simply because those transport options are not easy to navigate or to have a visibility on. And you mentioned, Eric, earlier the lack of willingness to share data with the views of the terminals, which may not have necessarily the capability to do it. That's a very important aspect indeed. But here it's the restriction from those who actually already share data, the restriction imposed by those already sharing data to those who would like, who are willing to share data, but for commercial reason, these data are not shared. So, and here we are often hearing that there is alleged commercial sensitivity about data, in particular about traffic data, and this is something we would like to bring to the table to convince actually that in order to bring more customers on rail, there is a need for more transparency. Why? Because there is actually, as I explained, a lack of transparency of rail services, which may allow customers to make an informed decision. And therefore, also this transparency induces a lack of reliability of the information, which in terms of forecast, ETA, and so on, may not necessarily be received, or at least in an easy way. So what are the principles put forward with this regulation? You are all used to this Rotterdam principle. We are here embedding in the regulation in a very visible manner, where we define telematic stakeholders. I'm mentioning here only a few of them, with those important today: terminal and transport intermodal transport operators, And those telematic stakeholders are actually involved in processes. Here, in relation to freight, these are the processes which are relevant, from capacity and traffic management, train preparation, as well as the management of wagon and their freight. So for this principle to function, there is a need to recognize that those telematic stakeholders in relation to those processes may have a legal, a commercial, or an operational responsibility. And here I would like to echo to the willingness to share. So there might be willingness to share for those actors not necessarily captured by obligations, meaning by the legislation, but here this TSI actually bring obligation on specific actors to share data, and therefore they have a legal responsibility in this data workflow. Beyond this regulation, this Rotterdam principle actually also grant right to access and right to use to those who have not necessarily an obligation or legal obligation to share data. But in that case, in the case of SMEs, for example, which are not necessarily captured by the urban nodes of, the nodes of the TEN-T regulation, which are basically framing the terminals in scope of the TSI Telematics. Those not necessarily captured by obligation would anyway, because they have operational responsibility in the transport chain, or even commercial responsibility in handling one or another service, would have anyway a right to access and to use the data without having obligation to share back and so on and so forth. So it will be an obligation for those stakeholders holding the data to make it accessible and to share it with, for example, those SME willing to share to receive the data, which may not necessarily be captured by the definition of operators of rail service facility, which is basically defining what is a terminal in the context of TSI Telematics. This being said, there is a need to go beyond, as I mentioned earlier, and here we are talking about making data on existing train services and routes publicly available. This is justified from our perspective with the need to bring more customers onto rail and to allow them to take informed decisions without imposing on them the struggle to find whom to contact, what are the services available, including in relation to all market barriers or market entry issues that those customers may face. So here we are talking about making, in relation to freight services, we are talking about working timetable, meaning the planification of train. We are talking about the traffic of the train, and we are talking about the composition of the train. This is firstly meant to embed in the regulation, again, in relation to this public data, a right to access and to use the data for specific purposes, meaning not for commercial purposes, but for operational and non-commercial purposes, meaning that when accessing this data, you can use it to be informed, basically, about the services available. But as soon as there is a need to reuse this data for basically commercial purposes, then this right is not granted through this regulation and should be subject to a commercial agreement. Of course, there is a justified exception to this, and those exceptions are the one on the right of the screen besides the yellow bubble, where there is a need to protect sensitive information. And here I did not mention commercial sensitive information, as we believe those data sets, working table, train traffic, and train composition are not commercial sensitive. But when we mean about sensitive information, we identified basically 3 reasons: national security, commercial or personal information, and upon request for freight rail undertaking, meaning that we grant a right for every freight RU to opt out of this obligation, meaning that public and free access to data is granted, but there is specific aspects in relation to the identification of the train and the technical characteristic of the wagons, meaning not all data. We are talking basically about taking out the identification of the RU in those information, working timetable, train traffic, and train composition, as well as the characteristic of the wagon embedded in train composition. All the rest will remain public. So this limited availability, this right to opt out would be only in relation to very specific data sets which have been acknowledged as triggering a commercial sensitivity risk. When this protection is opt-in, either by IAM or member state in relation to national security, or by freight railway taking in relation to personal and commercial information, then these information are still subject to the Rotterdam principle, or still limited to the Rotterdam principle, meaning that in any way, if you are involved or if you have a legal and operational or commercial responsibility in the transport chain, you still have access to this data, which has been hidden as public data by the freight railway taking, for example, and you can still access the data as part of the transport chain. So what are now the structured data to be shared? And TSI is benefiting from several years, about structured TAF messages, which are well developed and to a certain extent well deployed. Here's the purpose of this regulation is to make sure that those messages are not only used on the main network of the infrastructure managers, but from the very first to the very last mile, meaning in the terminals of a pass. Here we are really talking about trains being scheduled from point A in a terminal to point B in a terminal, and not anymore from the point of handover or interchange between the IM and the IM and the terminal. So the objective is to encourage paths to be allocated from the very first point to the very last point, right under the crane. And this principle actually unlock a lot of aspects. The first aspect which is unlocked is, of course, the certainty on and the reliability of the service, meaning the path is allocated with the date and time from the very first point to the very last point. So there is not anymore this uncertainty on either it will take 1 hour or a few days before my train is shunted between the endpoint of the path and the terminal right under the crane. So there is more efficient, basically, planning. But it also unlocks the possibility of having reliable ATA, estimated train of arrival, because we can then monitor the traffic and report about the train traffic in real time in accordance with the path which is allocated, meaning along the path which is allocated. And this also includes the so-called train closure, where a set of wagon is actually announced as ready for movement, either after loading or after unloading, meaning that all the steps of the process are actually covered. But the prerequisite to that, and this is very important to acknowledge, is that a path is allocated from the first to the last point, and not anymore until the, let's say, virtual border between the terminal and the infrastructure manager. And this is the key element to understanding this regulation obligation on terminals in relation to planning, to capacity management and traffic management, is in relation to paths which are allocated. If we look at the quality aspect, Eric mentioned monitoring and improvement of data quality earlier as one of the prerequisites. There is basically 3 pillars in this TSI, which are made more visible, which I believe were somehow pre-existing, but are here clarified and made let's say, expressed in a binding manner. Those three pillars are the data quality, which is measured and actually announced to everybody receiving or accessing train traffic information. As mentioned, the aim is to make it public. So embedded in the forecast, meaning in the ETA, they should be an ex post measurement of the accuracy of this ETA embedded in this ETA to basically put trust and confidence on the information which is shared as forecast. Meaning that if you know my train will be delayed by 2 hours, you also know that this announced 2 hours is as a reliability percentage of XYZ, and that you can plan operation and connection onwards accordingly. There is also a mechanism of quality assurance check to basically improve this accuracy measurement after the train has arrived, but also an historical record of train traffic data, which is required mostly for commercial purposes in case of claims, for example, so that there is a trace of what were the delays and so on and so forth, and the delay cause in particular, in case there should be any claim in relation to the service which has been delivered. The last point of one of the last points of this presentation is the bringing together of common and centralized reference databases for intermodal loading unit. And here it's actually a great output of a project led by UIRR, offering to basically set out and ensure that terminals can set and maintain such databases. And such databases, including the identification of intermodal loading unit, their types, from container to semi-trailers, characteristic of those units, but also the characteristic related to the compatibility with wagon and routes. And this is an aspect here which will allow also, which can take advantage of the efficient tracking and tracings of the freight, and in the case of intermodal transport unit, of the intermodal loading units. Last point, which is, I understood, a challenge for the implementation of proposed obligation, is related to the planning of stabling and shunting movement in terminals, meaning when there is no pass located in a terminal. And this planning aspect, when there is no pass in a terminal, is proposed to be let as an open point. Whereas for the monitoring of movement, of wagon movement within a terminal, when there is no pass allocated, therefore the incentive to plan pass is to ensure that we can track the wagon, at least when they enter and exit the terminal. If a train is entering and exiting a terminal on the basis of a path, then that's very clear that this obligation is null, and that there is no monitoring of wagon status to be done by terminals. But in case a path is not allocated up to inside the terminal, then there is those reasons, there is a need for the terminal to at least monitor when those wagons are entering and exiting the terminal. That's the obligation which is proposed, and that's basically close my presentation, Eric.
Yes, thanks a lot. So many thanks, I think, for this overview of the new TSI. I can only add, don't forget that's a merge about the TAP and the TAF. So there are a lot of, I think, of existing elements that are part also of this TSI Telematics. So it's not completely a new text, I think, that are removing all the old, but of course we have the new requirements. Normally we have a Q&A session, I think, after my intervention, but I think there are some quite critical, I think, elements that we could maybe clarify immediately. Yann, if you agree on that. So one, you are speaking about train paths. There is a question about how do you link, sorry, this TSI Telematics with the proposal of the Commission regarding the capacity regulation. Is there a link, or for the moment is a bit unlinked between TSI Telematics and this capacity regulation? That would be the first question.
Many thanks. So the capacity regulation is setting governance principle on capacity, is also setting some horizontal objective on the digitalization. There is an overall article on digitalization of capacity management. And this TSI is basically both answering to the, meaning echoing the obligation under this regulation, but also putting together the building block to make this digital communication happen in an efficient manner. And basically the digitalization aspect of the capacity regulation are meant to be dealt in the TSI. And that's actually already clarified in the text, which is referring to the implementing act developed under the Rail Interoperability Directive. The TSI is one of them. With such wording, we don't close the door to basically other TSI to also intervene, as OP TSI is one of the other important one, but also the RINF regulation, which is also developed under the Rail Interoperability Directive. And basically the ecosystem of implementing act, the TSI Telematics is part of, is there to implement operational and digital aspect of the capacity regulation.
Okay, thanks a lot for your response to this question. Now a more critical or a question regarding the exchange of data. We know the sector is not so open, I think, for transparency. And there's, of course, a question about why should we share also then commercial data, or maybe you have to specify, indeed, I think this slide, because there are some remarks regarding, but we shouldn't share dangerous goods data. We shouldn't share, I think, some commercial sensitive data because there would be no impact on traffic or volumes. Maybe can you specify, because you put this already on the screen, what are these sensitive information protective measures that you have implemented in the TSI to ensure first, I think that was also another comment, that of course competitors cannot see each other data, because this is certainly something that we have to avoid. And how can we somehow satisfy a bit here the concerns of some of the stakeholders? Yeah.
Thank you. Indeed, a relevant question, but maybe as a Christmas gift already addressed actually in the proposal. So I really incentivize everybody to read carefully at the text along with those explanations. When it comes to aspect mentioned about safety, security, dangerous good, and so on, those aspects are addressed, meaning that for national security measures, which is explained as, for example, transport of dangerous goods, nuclear transport, and so on and so forth, there is basically a possibility for member state and infrastructure managers to decide to opt out from this public availability requirement. So this is covered, and it is up to IM and member state to assess which type of transport should be excluded and so on. So basically, IMs and member state are free to define what is sensitive in relation to security and not to safety, sorry, what is sensitive in relation to security. Then there is the commercial sensitivity question about publishing commercial data, publishing or letting other competitors to see your data and so on. First, I would like to clarify that from a Commission point of view, we certainly reject the idea that being transparent on your transport and type of transport is commercially sensitive. This is a commercial choice to either hide or not the transport you are running, and one RU may have a justified reason to do so, although I would be interested to hear about this. But another one may want to promote its services. Let's, for example, imagine a new entrant. I'm totally sure that a new entrant would be very keen on promoting its services publicly. Therefore, the choice to opt out from this requirement for public availability should be a choice of the freight rail taking, and certainly not a general rule that this data should be hidden. And then the market will react itself. Either those RUs which are transparent with their services are perhaps making a more profitable business than those living in the still cave age and willing to hide their data. So let's see how the market will react to that. Let's the market drive this evolution, and let freight RUs opt out themselves if they wish to from this public availability requirement. So again, all those aspects are, I believe, addressed, and we basically now look forward for the implementation of this and see how the market developed accordingly.
Okay, thanks, Yann. I will then raise two other questions. One is about the telematics stakeholders. There's a question because in your slide, I think you didn't mention at all the shippers. Maybe you can clarify the role of a shipper into this TSI telematic. And the second aspect that has been addressed is about terminals. What about terminals that are trimodal? So meaning that you have road, rail, and also inland waterway. Is there any now connectivity also with this inland waterway environment?
Thank you. So we are referring here to terminals to simplify this presentation and this discussion. The text refers to operators of rail service facilities, which is a term defined under the market directive, rail market directive. And we are basically framing this, this naming in the light of the terminal identified by the TEN-T regulation. Also having in mind this issue of SMEs and small terminals, which may not necessarily cannot necessarily afford to implement EDICT systems and so on and so forth. So basically, there would be an obligation on those terminals, in particular those multimodal ones you just mentioned, to apply this TSI, because in the scope of TEN-T and therefore in the scope of or identified as terminal in this regulation, whereas others would have a right to access the data and may, because they see a commercial benefit to it, and may implement the TSI accordingly. As always, when you are not in scope of a regulation, either although you are one of the actors mentioned in the regulation, it means that if you apply the processes of the regulation, then there is an incentive to apply the process as described in the regulation, but of course, no obligation.
Okay, thank you. Maybe, okay, I will address the last question because that's now coming also in the chat. So, sorry for that, Yann, but I think it's important to do it now. It's about the benefits, because I assume that with a regulation or with any regulation, you have to provide an impact assessment. Maybe you can say some words about the impact assessment that you should also then prepare to support this TSI telematic regulation. Because here, also in the chat, there's some audience experts are challenging the benefits of this TSI telematics. So can you maybe specify a bit more what would or not be part of this impact assessment?
Many thanks. Indeed, this is a slide which would be missing in my presentation. Thank you for that question. So to support this Commission initiative, the agency has been required to assist us in delivering an assessment of those measures and in particular of their costs and benefits. Therefore, the agency is consulting stakeholders as we speak about the cost of those tools. And we understood, for example, UIRR in relation to its members would also contribute to this evaluation of the agency in relation to the cost on terminals and operators of rail service facilities, or intermodal transport operators as well, of course. I would like to also react to the road versus rail competition, because again, this objective is actually to fight a shift from rail to road, but rather to attract more freight onto rail. Today, indeed, on the road markets, there is no obligation for public availability of tracking and tracing the goods which are transported. Because we want more transparency on the data as a trigger to bringing more freight onto rail, this is a measure which will be, one can see as a disadvantage, but would actually be an advantage of rail compared to road. So again, those bringing to the table the commercial sensitivity of the data are very much welcome to explain, analyzing the messages in very detail. What are the part of the messages which are commercially sensitive? Because this is the analysis we have done together with experts in expert group, which were required to list us the aspects which are commercial sensitive, and we came with an exhaustive list. This exhaustive list, beyond the security issue we already mentioned before, are the identification of the undertaking and the technical characteristic of the wagon and the loads. Those two are possible for freight RUs to opt out. So again, there is no risk of commercial sensitivity being jeopardized. Quite the opposite. Freight RUs will have the possibility to opt out for this.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Yann. Okay, I have to stop now. Even there are a lot of, I think, messages continuing in the chat. So it means that okay, you will certainly receive as Commission officer, I think, a lot of remarks and certainly concerns from different stakeholders. I propose now to go then to the next point of the agenda. So that's a bit how the intermodal trade sector reacted to the TSI Telematics. How can also a project like EDICT contribute to the development of this TSI? So I will come back to my screen again, and I will share my presentation. I have to switch now. Yes. So now I'm coming back to the role of UIRR as industry association, but also as a coordinator of the EDICT project. So I just to switch to the next slide. Yeah, okay. That's really in a nutshell what we achieved in our project. We are speaking about interoperability of the data. We are speaking about sharing. So you see all the different stakeholders. I will take really, I think one focus was the combined transport terminals. We had here different types of system and also players. So to be clear, we had a Belgium-based company, so Combinant in Antwerp. We had the port community system of the Port of Rotterdam also in place. We had then also a player in Austria, Wincont, and we had then, for example, also a large group like Hupac. So we had different categories of terminal, different size of terminals, and also different system. And based on that, we have developed a harmonized process and also the data elements that should be shared among the intermodal community regarding the intermodal terminals. And on this basis, we have been confronted of some various obstacles to exchange the data. So the first thing was, of course, to produce the data. So meaning that the CT terminals, and Yann mentioned, I think, this notion of train closure for the terminal. So it's the timestamps where the terminal activities have been done. So meaning the train has been loaded. So all the wagon sets have been loading, the transport documents are ready. So meaning that the responsibility is handed over from the terminals to the shunting or the rail undertaking responsible for the traction. We had also another activity regarding the quality management system. So where we had to collect different data sources, mainly from the infrastructure managers, rail undertakings, intermodal operators on different routes. And here also we have been confronted in somehow harmonizing the process and also in the data exchange. You see on the slides a bit more complex structure. But to be clear, we are speaking about door-to-door intermodal and competitiveness. So even in the chat, I see that it's a challenge, or they are challenging the competitiveness basically for intermodal freight transport. That's an essential, I think, element to increase the data sharing. Here you see intermodal operators like 𝗣𝗿𝗃𝗲𝗿𝗃𝗶𝗲𝗄 rail cargo operator, also then the different terminal operators. You see how and with whom they're exchanging the data. And here you see very clear that a bilateral exchange was not the best option. So it means that between terminal operators and intermodal operators using the same terminal, the idea is to have an in-between layer, what we call this intermodal transport data. And you will hear a bit later, I think, from Mr. Christoph Büchner, so the EDICT and this 𝗣𝗿𝟐𝗄𝗏 data hub. So that's one of the solution that we might have. And then we have the other part, how can we connect and to get data from the railway road? So that's the connectivity with the platform of RNE, so this TIS application. And also here today, you will have, I think, a bit the outputs that we had, I think, in the last months and the discussion that we had with RNE and how to improve first the connectivity, so with the common interface and also with the RNE TIS application, but also how can we integrate better the terminals, and certainly with a focus on the small size terminals, because the capabilities are not the same, and also the cost, because that's also put in the chat. We have to limit the cost of course, increasing the data sharing regarding the road. But the problem is always that those LSPs, you have this also on the screen, that are requesting the same type of data as for road, as for rail. And this is very clear that the benchmark is road, and we have to be compliant with also the benchmark of road. And we are not yet there. So we have really to find solution for large players, but also then for SMEs. Now to go into the details of the acts and the annex that have been produced or presented by Yann here in general terms. We are pleased to see indeed that the Rotterdam Declaration is still put in the recital. So it's very important element to continue with this Rotterdam clause that we have inserted in the previous TAF TSI. And make it very clear that we need to improve the data sharing to better align the intermodal logistics processes. And you see also that we have to involve directly, and that's in the yellow part, the terminals and the intermodal transport operator. So that's a very clear statement in the recital. So meaning that you have to do something regarding those actors. The third thing is about definition. So that's important when you review or when you read this act, that for intermodal, that's much more integration, much more precise role of the different stakeholders. So first, that's something very important, that the terminals are now somehow put under this operators of rail service facility. So that's a directive from 2012. That they define operators of rail service facilities. So it's not only the terminal operators that are here impacted by the TSI Telematics, but also shunting, marshalling yards, fueling station, and so on. That's a list of 8 or 9 different service facilities that are now part also of the TSI Telematics. Already said by the Commission telematics stakeholders. So we are pleased to see that now it's very clear that the intermodal transport operators and also the terminals are really part of the telematics stakeholders, and also very clear that's part of data holder, also data recipient. Freight customer, So that's also important that the entity that is responsible for the consignment node is also considered as a freight customer. And here, very important also, intermodal transport operators are included. And to reply to the question of the shippers, that's how the shippers are included, because if the shipper is the entity which has issued the consignment node, that he will be part also of the TSI Telematics, meaning that he will be part of the data sharing. What is also completely new is the definition now about intermodal transport operator, because that was missing in the last version of the TAF-TI. And here we make it clear, I think, that what is really an intermodal transport operator in the context of the TSI Telematics. I'm now going into the details of the different articles of the Act. We have seen, and that's not the first time, in our previous project called ELETA, also in Digital Train and also in EDICT, we speak about here one particular point regarding contractual agreements. We have issues, I think, to somehow reuse some data because of these restrictive contractual agreements. I will take just one example that we have been confronted in the EDICT project is the port community system. So there is a contractual agreement between the port community system and, for example, an infrastructure manager that make it very clear that only the port community system can use the data. So for them, it's very difficult to use the data for other parties because it's a community system. They would like to use the data for other people. So it can be for the terminals, it can be for the customers, it can be for the shippers. And due to the fact there are such contractual agreements in place, they are not allowed to reuse. And I think here, that's a big, I think, restriction, I think, in data sharing. We should allow, I think, to go over these contractual agreements in order to be in the capacity also to reuse those data in a simple and in a smooth way to other parties that are also then here interested, I think, to receive the data. Sorry, just because I have something on my screen. So the Article 5.1 speaks about the imposition or the new requirements for infrastructure managers, but also the operators of rail services, rail service facilities. And it's really mandatory. So public access to and the right to use. For intermodal terminals, we are questioning. So you see working timetables, train traffic data on train composition message. Here we are challenging as UIR because we have been also confronted here in the EDICT project. The train composition data, for example, we are not so sure that it should be on the responsible of a terminal. And secondly, certainly for the working timetables, they shouldn't be part of that. To be challenged. So that's something that we are completely open. I think it's the question of public access. To have an access to the freight-related data, yes, but maybe publicly is something else. So that's something, and certainly maybe for freight, we have to see if this is the right, I think, solution and the right requirement. Yeah. Need to move, yeah. Yann mentioned it. So in the Act, in the Article 9, there is a reference to the central repository and reference data. What is important for us and also then for the sector, it should not only be publicly available, but also free of charge. So this reference file I'm speaking about here, the location codes, and also it must be very clear what we are talking about. Are we speaking about the primary location codes only, or we have a reference data database also then for the sub-zero location codes, as we had for the moment for the freight terminals that are here managed for the moment by UIRR. And that's what we said, we need a clear governance structure, because if this is sent over to ERA, what would be then the role or the future role of UIR or any other association that are managing those codes? Does it mean that we have to hand over all the results that we have today to ERA, or there will be a kind of continuation that UIR, for example, can continue to manage those codes for the sector? And here clearly some technical documents should be updated because there are some technical documents that is 103 and 4 are clearly mentioned as technical documents to be referenced, and we think very clear that it should be updated and ready before the final vote on the TSI Telematics. That should be, and that was not completely set, but I think it will be then in June 2025. When you go then to the annex of this TSI Telematics, there is some reference to the capacity management, train preparation, and traffic management. And you have here some specification of the rights to receive the data. And here clearly mentioned, you see on this point too, that telematics stakeholders involved in the transport service and freight customers. So that's how LSPs and shippers are included. So shall have the right to receive or access free of charge. So then messages and data regarding capacity, train preparation, and traffic management. So there's a clear here imposition that those stakeholders can receive the data and free of charge. That's very important, I think, because there was a lot of, I think, also discussion in the EDICT, I think, about the cost of sharing the data. We are not speaking about the system cost, but we are speaking about charging the transactional, I think, messages. The annex, and in particular the chapter 2.6 of the annex, somehow implement requirements for the operator to exchange some type of information or messages. We are speaking about train running information. We are speaking about training run forecast. We are speaking about train delay codes and train running interruption message. We have tested this in EDICT, so without knowing that in the TSI Telematics it will appear. So for the train running information, we have found out a solution for the terminals, because this was also a question in the chats. Because today, if you are loading units on the wagon, is not yet a train if they are not part of a slot or if not a part of a train path. But here we have find a solution for the terminals to cover also that this timestamp called train closure, and this also have been accepted by the sector. And this kind of workaround has also been put in the point 4 of this general description, that we can use this train running information in order to comply with the TSIs. In the EDICT project, we have already tested and validated the exchange of this TRF, TDCM, and TRIM messages. So it means that we can only confirm that it's a possibility, and we have somehow confirmed that it's also then more than a possibility, because we have now tested and validated in the project EDICT that those messages can be exchanged. Because I have always. So as Yann said, there is an open point about the wagon status message and the obligation of the operators of rail service facility to exchange and to provide wagon status message. We make it clear as UIRR, as also the representatives of the terminals, that we are really challenging that, because this is really a big burden for the terminals, because they are not in the capacity to monitor the movements of the wagons within the terminal facility. And we propose really to make this as an option. So if a terminal is in the capacity to provide this wagon status message, okay, but to make it mandatory to all the terminals to send this wagon status message is somehow a very complex option. We have analyzed this in the ELETA project, but also in EDICT, and for the moment, really the operators like terminals are really not in the capacity, I think, to provide this information. So we recommend to put this as an optional feature for the future. New intermodal loading unit reference database. So that's a long history at UIRR and also for its members. So to build a technical reference file like we have for the wagons, So it's important, I think, to have the same kind of reference database also then for the intermodal loading units. What is important to understand here is that UIRR is responsible for the identification of loading units, so that's called the EDU codes. So we have already a contact with all these EDU code owners. The idea is to extend now our database with technical elements. So that was discussed in the last TSI revision, so that was already accepted by the sector. Now it's confirmed in the TSI Telematics. The only thing that has changed that now there's a interesting first wording under the coordination of ERA. So we have to somehow understand what will be the role of ERA in this coordination activity, because UIRR, and also here you see on the slide, we have an organization called BIC, that's the Bureau International de Conteneurs, is responsible for the identification of the BIC, so that's the BIC code, but they have also implemented a database on the technical characteristics for maritime containers. And we need somehow to protect this, all these investments done in previous, I think, projects, and to understand, I think, and to align, I think, with the Commission ERA, what would be then our role as UIR and BIC, but also then the role of ERA in managing those documents. And in the last TSI revision, we have updated this document with the key requirements for such a reference database. We have to see if this is still, I think, valid, or we have to improve the text in order to comply fully with the annex that or the article 3.3.3 that has been inserted into the TSI Telematics. That's in a nutshell, I think, what has been discussed in EDICT, what are also the output of EDICT. So now I didn't see the chat. I don't know if there are some now specific questions, I think, on this intervention. I'm just here now looking in the chat if there are some. Yeah, there's some very long, I think. That's for me difficult, I think, to go through all the questions. But maybe if somebody can also raise his hand, I think, to intervene, that's also possible. I'll be just here. I see there's a remark. Sorry, that's difficult because there are really a lot of different questions and then going in this and the different direction. So one question is about the contractual agreements. That's critical because we know the importance of contractual agreements, but in data sharing we have to be very careful because that's one of the way also then to limit the data sharing, and certainly with the intention of the Commission, I think, to say clearly that if you are part of a freight service and you can be identified, you should get the data. And in some contractual agreements, you limit this capacity and capabilities. And basically, I think as UIR, we should go over to that. So we need to have some data sharing agreements that are a bit more open, I think, to facilitate those data sharing that is completely relevant. I make the example of port community system, but I could also take the example of here the system of TSI as a data hub. A data hub is just transferring data to one player to the other. And here also in the contractual agreements, there are some limitation. And for TSI, it's a very complex now element because somehow they are not allowed to send the data to the recipients. And that's just a data hub. So we have to find new ways and maybe new contractual agreements in the different here process of intermodal in order to ensure that those actors that are part of a freight service should also then receive the data. If we fail in that, I can only guarantee you that we are going to lose market share. So that's maybe the most important argument, that yes, indeed, it will trigger costs. It will trigger certainly a lot of, I think, new ways of exchanging the data. But if we are not doing it, for me, by my personal opinion, is that we are going to fail, and certainly then road will win. And that's certainly what we have to fight for. After the meeting, we will try, of course, to respond to all the comments made in the chat. So we are saving all the chat messages, and you will receive directly then a response for us, and we also then put all the questions, I think, in the Q&A on our social media, that you have also the response for all. I propose now, because also time is running, I think it's already 11:10, so we have 2 additional speakers. So in the agenda, I will then come back to the presentation. I've mentioned this several times about the connectivity between the intermodal world and also railway world, how important also the infrastructure managers are. And here I have invited Jaroslav Lučkay from RNE as sales manager to make it clear, I think, that the common interface and also this TIS solution is one of the data sources that are needed to also then to comply with the TSI Telematics. And now I just invite Jaroslav to present us, I think, the smart ways to connect data or to have then the data from the infrastructure manager. So Jaroslav, if you can then share your screen and then go through your slides. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eric. So hello, everyone. My name is Jaroslav, and I work in RNE as a sales manager. And today I will talk about a very interesting part of our product portfolio, namely smart ways for connecting through common interface and the RNE Group Solution, or Train Information System Group Solution. So first, a little introduction, very brief, just to a little bit refresh our knowledge about RNE. So RailNetEurope is an umbrella organization of 38 rail infrastructure managers from over 30 different countries, and RNE provides tools and services in the areas of capacity, traffic or corridor management, and also IT infrastructure and data management. So today we are going to speak specifically about 2 of RNE flagship products. First one is a Train Information System Dataflow, tailor-made for groups of undertakings and some joint projects, and also its usage with the common interface. So firstly, let's talk about the foundation of the overall data exchange, and it's the common interface. Common interface is a TAFTAP TSI compliant peer-to-peer application created and used for message exchange. It can be locally installed in customers' data centers and can also be used to exchange other customer-specific messages. Using common interface comes with many benefits, but mainly we should mention its open source software environment and maximum compatibility both with existing and future legacy systems. And also the technology stack that common interface work on, so it's Java, 𝗲𝗿𝗄𝗏, and MySQL. To better imagine its main benefit, let's right now show how it works without it. So to exchange several types of messages from different sources to users' endpoints, you need as many channels as there are sources. And on top of that, you can end up with either unsecured or TSI uncompliant message exchange. While using common interface secures unified data flow from multiple sources to one or more users' endpoint. Everything depends on the setting up and implementation of it. Yeah, as you can see, everything is harmonized, secured, and what is very necessary, certified, as every common interface must have its certification. RNE offers all-in-one common interface solution, which means that this is ready to be installed, but also you have a possibility to build your own interface and let it be certified by RNE. To offer the best service, RNE also offers additional services on top. So if it is a free testing license to test the common interface and the data flow, also we provide trainings or even testing of your own interface if you wish to ensure if everything works well. We are here for that. Becoming a user of common interface is pretty straightforward. So you just submit an order form. We can provide it to you by mail anytime you wish to implement the common interface. Then you just e-sign the agreement and you can start installing the common interface. Now, let's come back to our portfolio and let's talk about train information system data flow. So, RNE offers the data provision of real-time data via already mentioned common interface and also historical data. Yet today we will speak about real-time data, the first option. And to cover the demand of the market, RNE offers this train information system data flow either for individual or as an individual solution suitable for single railway undertakings, or so-called group solution for projects grouping multiple entities under one roof. And how it works? RNE collects data from infrastructure managers and stores it on its servers. After that, RNE and the leading entity of the group create a connection via the common interface, and then the data flow starts. Leading entity, which can be any entity, project leader or UIRR, anyone can form the group and be the group leader, receives the data and then can aggregate it, filter it, anyhow work with it and use it, and then redistribute to group members in any form. So as a part of an application, database, anything. RNE offers 8 types of messages that we can send towards our customers or users. All of them are TAFTAP TSI compliant, yet the most important and widely used are the first 2. Path detail message, which provides planned daily overview of a train, and train running information message that shows the real-time information. So simply speaking, path detail message shows where the train should be according to the timetable, while train running information message shows the real-time position of a train. Becoming a user is as easy as for the common interface. So again, you submit the order form, then e-sign the proper agreement, set up the connection, and start collecting declarations of group members. What is a declaration? Declaration is a document that states that the entity that wants to or agrees to be part of the group and wants to be the member, and it agrees that data of their trains will be redistributed or at least sent to the group leader. And if there is no other agreement between the group leader and the members itself, those messages or data will be redistributed to every member of the group. So if speaking about the common interface and train information system live map, this would be it for today. Yeah, if you have any more questions about RNE or about how RNE can help you revolutionize or streamline your workflows, do not hesitate to drop us an email at data.services@rne.eu. Or book a meeting by scanning this QR code, and we will gladly meet with you and answer any other questions that arise. Thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, okay.
Yes, Jaroslav. So thanks for this overview of the main portfolio and the services in which we're involved in the EDICT project. So many thanks, Jaroslav, also for your efforts, I think, to come to a solution. It was not an easy task, but we managed it, yeah. I have just a question that I try to understand, so I will read it. How to become a user tie into common interface connection, direct connection between companies? I have to try to understand the question here.
Yeah, I understand the question in this case. So
okay.
Yeah, if of course mainly and most often we speak about RNE and company connection, yet of course CI/CI connection between 2 companies is also possible. So in this case, you just write an email at data.services@rne.eu. We will send you the respective agreement. You will sign it, and you can set up the connection not between you, your company, and RNE, but between two companies. So you do this CI/CI connection. So yeah, it is also possible.
Okay, thanks. That was replying indeed to your question, to the question of the participant. Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot. You have speaking about group, Jaroslav. We have now an example of what we call a group solution. So I will invite now Mr. Büchner from the company TSI to explain, I think, what we have implemented in the EDICT project. So that's the 𝗣𝗿𝗄𝗴𝗄𝗲𝗄𝗄𝗄𝗄 Data Hub. So I will open then the slide for you, Christoph, and you let me know when I have to move from one slide to the other. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes, good morning.
Hello.
My name is Christoph Büchner. I'm Managing Director of TSI, and in a second job, I'm also Head of IT at Kombiverkehr in Frankfurt. I'm here for 25 years now, and I know the data interchange between shareholders since many years. Eric, are you ready? I can't see the presentation. So maybe I start without the presentation. It's a little bit ungrateful to present data sharing because you don't see anything. I can't show you the data. I can just show you how it works, and but it's very important. And you know, the intermodal supply chain is very complex, and this is the first big issue if you compare the intermodal transport with the pure road transport. You have many electronic interfaces. You must organize the different parts of the intermodal transport, and many digital solutions are on the market. Every customer and every actor has its own digital solution. So at the end, it's a very complex end-to-end information change. And that was the starting position to go to implement a project. Next, please, Eric. We sit together and we're thinking about what can we do to optimize the data chain in the intermodal transport. We would like to share real-time information. We will consolidate data in the intermodal supply chain. And the most important, we will do this with an harmonized electronic interface. I will come to this later. And we will make data available and make the supply chain more transparent. Next. We started with the so-called 𝗣𝗿𝗄𝗴𝗄𝗄𝗄𝗄 project in 2017. It was a funded project from the German ministry. The data hub was planned to increase the transparency in the intermodal transport chain. And as I mentioned before, the most important thing that we started, we decided to use a common standard, an existing standard in intermodal transport, the so-called EDICT format. And for all information that we exchange via the data hub, it is mandatory to use this EDICT format, so that everybody knows about the the format you have to use and the content in the fields. So that makes easier to understand what the participants will exchange. And you know, if you send something in the field terminal, then you know what is has to be written there, and there is no problem to find the correct terminal. Next, please. The participants in the initial project, you can see on this slide, we have partners from all different actors: logistics service providers, intermodal operators, railway undertakings, and terminals. But this was just the initial partners. Our aim was to get as many as possible partners into 𝗲𝗄 4.0 at the end, and but for the starting, it was important that we had a smaller group, so that because that was easier to find solutions and get into the right direction. But you see in the duration, 4 years project, nearly 4 years project, it was a hard work to do, and but finally we come to a solution. Next. What is the 𝗲𝗄 Data Hub? It is very important. We are not a platform. You can't see anything. It's just for electronic data exchange. It's a central hub where the actor is pushing his message to and referring to the receiver, and the receiver is pulling his messages from the hub. So that is clear that only the sender is responsible to give the receivers who will get the message. So the data hub, 𝗲𝗄 4.0 data hub, don't send anything to other partners. Just the sender is able to decide who will receive messages. And as I mentioned, we use at the moment the standard EDICT 4.1. This is the actual version, and the hub will validate these messages that will send through. And I came later to some examples what kind of messages we exchange via the hub. Next one. The main benefits to use this data hub, we have more transparency for the transport from the booking to the pickup of the loading unit. We start always with the booking, and ends up with the pickup of the unit at the final terminal. So it's easier to have the complete view of the transport, and for the customer, it's a benefit that they can book through only one single channel to different operators. So you just have to implement this one interface, and with this interface you can decide if I book the unit by via 𝗲𝗄 or via Kombiverkehr or any other operator. We optimized the forecast information. This is not a system, it's just a channel to exchange. But with this channel, we are now able to send information to our customer about the estimated time of pickup, short ETP. And this we use already, and also 𝗲𝗄, we as Kombiverkehr use this, and also 𝗲𝗄 use this function already to send in regular manner the ETP to the customers. In addition, we share timetable information via the hub. So if you are connected, you get the timetable at the moment from Kombiverkehr and 𝗲𝗄. So you don't have to look into Excel files or something like that, you can receive these messages from the data hub. The characteristics is that you have only one single point of access. You must connect to the data hub, and once you are connected, you can exchange all kind of data. You just have to give some status numbers that you will receive, or you will send, and you will get this data via the single internet, single access point. It's a modern cloud-based solution. We have this. We have their service an IT service provider who is responsible for the technical system. So just so that DXI as itself is just responsible for the contractual things, and the technical things were done by the IT service solution provider. Next, please. What is the current status of 𝗲𝗄𝗄𝗏 4.0 and DXI? After the funding project, we started to found the company, DX Intermodal GmbH in Germany. This was a tough process because we have DB in the consortium and 𝗣𝗿𝗄𝗏𝗺𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗏𝗄 and some other big players, and this was not that easy to found a company with these shareholders. But finally, we make it. We start in October 22. The commercial data hub was ready in 2023, and the first commercial data exchange started in March 23. And now at the moment we have about 25 commercial users already. You can find them, or a few of them, on the DXI homepage. There is a list with connected partners. And on the right, you see an overview. This is an overview from 𝗄𝗲𝗄𝗏𝗺𝗃𝗲𝗄. This is not DXI. It's just 𝗄𝗲𝗄𝗃𝗃𝗏. These are examples of messages that 𝗄𝗲𝗄𝗃𝗃𝗏 is able to share. DXI can share more than 40 different messages, but not 𝗄𝗲𝗄𝗃𝗃𝗏 has not implemented all of them. We have implemented, I think, the most important from the commercial timetable via the booking, the unit delivered at the terminal, the unit loaded on the wagon, the train departure and the train arrival, and finally the arrival at the terminal, and the last message is the picked up at the terminal. So these are the messages already in place. We are working to add additional ones, and very important at the moment, DXI is working also on the common interface of RNE. So we will also be able to exchange tough TSI messages in addition to EDICT. And in the future, we will also be able to use the group solution, so that all our customers are able to get or send data from or to TIS RNE via the common interface. So if you are connected to 𝗲𝗄𝗄𝗏𝗺𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗏𝗺 4.0, then you are able to also use the tough TSI messages from RNE. We will implement most of the messages shown before, So the train running information message, the timetable messages, the train forecast, and the train disruption message. So these are the most important messages that we already use at 𝗣𝗿𝗄𝗵𝗺𝗺 or in the intermodal transport. And this is our also our aim in the EDICT project. And we hope that we can start exchange data beginning of next year. Our IT service provider is now implementing the common interface. And if everything works well, we can start in the first quarter of 2025 to get data from RNE via 𝗣𝗿 4.0 to our stakeholders. Yes, this was my presentation. If you are interested to get more information about DXI and the Data Hub, you can find this also on the internet. And I think I see a question if there is a possibility to share the presentation. Eric, if you like, you can share my presentation, and there you find all necessary information regarding the homepage. And if you are interested, you can contact me directly. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Christoph, for providing the necessary information on the data. It was really an important piece in the EDICT project. And thanks, I think, to the hard work that we had also with RNE, that we managed, I think, to integrate, I think, some messages from the tough TSI world to the world of intermodal. And you are also hearing that even the logistic world or the combined transport world is also trying to somehow integrate the tough TSI environment, because we are also mapping and the tough TSI message with the EDIGS messages. That's first step. And the second is also then to somehow improve also a data hub like this, I think, also in the tough TSI environment. So that's an interesting integration. And thanks to the EDICT project, I think we managed to have this group solution in place with RNE. And also then we have the capabilities, I think, to integrate also then, and that was the intention, smaller terminals into this environment. So thanks to solutions like here 𝗣𝗿𝗄𝗵𝗺𝗄 4.0, that's also then a possibility. Some of the terminals that are part of EDICT have been connected then to this new data hub here. Okay, I don't see a direct question to you, Christoph, into the chat, but indeed we will, and that's I'm starting to make some conclusions. So all the presentation will be shared. Of course, we will do here a social media presence, so we will announce the presentation and so on, and you will also receive then a direct email from us. I think thank you all the participants. We are a bit late in the agenda, so I have a last point on the agenda. It's just for information and also for the member states. Sorry, I'm just here trying, yeah. As a continuation, we as UIR, we are developing a new CEF2 proposal on data sharing in a door-to-door perspective. So we are here about 15 partners, and we integrate different actors of the intermodal transport chain. There is an important market situation that really imposes us to accelerate the digitalization or the digital transformation of our sector. You know, with the policy context with the tough TSI Telematics, but there are much more new also initiatives taken by the Commission that push, I think, our sector, I think, to go in this direction. And here the objective is really, I think, to integrate all these actors, I think, in a seamless way, and also then to be part of this TSI Telematics compliance. And if there are some actors that would like to join our initiative, so don't hesitate to address to an email with your interest, and we will see if we can integrate you into the CEF2 proposal. I just here push, I think, in terms of urgency, because we have to submit this proposal by the end of, or to be on the 21st of January. So there's some room for integrated new actors if this is needed. Okay. So to conclude, so first you have a TSI Telematics that will be certainly still challenged by the sector. There is a version 6 on the table. So in the next month, certainly the different stakeholders will react on that. So that's certainly what Yann can expect from the sector. You can expect from UIRR to still have some strong bilateral meetings, and I thank him for his openness, and also this is willing to understand a bit more our world. For UIRR, so we have this project on the table. We are going to finalize the EDICT project, so we are submitting now all the deliverables that we have to produce. So everything that we have promised in the grant agreement is covered, so that's also good news. You will also soon receive a save the date invitation for our final conference that will be organized on the 11th of February here in Brussels. We are going to send out the invitation for that. And for the last point is, I would like to thank here first the speakers, so Yann, Jaroslav, and also Christoph to be part of this webinar. And I can only thank also for all the participants that are still there. It's also good news that, okay, we have started, I think, with more than 100 participants. We are still 70. So even if this is a bit longer than planned. So many thanks for your attendance, and you will receive then soon all the documents that have been shared here during the presentation and the webinar. So many thanks, and I can only wish you an excellent end of the month and a nice Christmas time and a good, safe, I think, adventure to 25. Thanks a lot, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.